Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dr. and Mrs. Curry podcast that will focus on parenting related matters cross culturally, sociologically, and socioeconomically without inclusion. The intention is for this to be an all inclusive parenting related podcast. My name is Dr. Joshua John Curry, and with me is my gorgeous, intelligent, talented wife, Cartrisa Lynn Curry, and myself. I am a board certified family recovery specialist, and my beautiful wife here, she is in the process of wrapping up a Bachelor of Arts in Human Development and Family Studies. The episodes in our podcast will focus on a lot of the matters related to family and parenting related considerations, including childhood pregnancy, substance abuse, stigmatization around surrounding mental health, pedophilia that our children may be exposed to, and things of that nature. Today, we will predominantly focus on the absent father, which unfortunately is something that is a cross-cultural phenomenon internationally. A little about me. I'm about a month away from my 38th birthday, and my wife, she's 35 years old, and that will come into consideration here later in this episode. I have a, as far as my biological father, I don't have many experiences or many memories of him. I do wish him very well. I do wish him health. I wish him wealth, and I wish him happiness. But as far as my memory serves me, he was someone who came around as far as visitations with me and time with me during my childhood up to about the age of 13 years old was the last time I saw him physically. He would come around, and when he did come around, it was, according to my memory, if it serves me correctly, it was just about once a year, perhaps for a weekend or an extended weekend. And I do have very fond memories of him. What about you? As far as, do you have any memories as far as with your biological father?
I only have for adulthood. I have one memory of when I was about 12. My mom said that when I was younger, I had scarlet fever, and he did take us to the hospital for that. But as far as like an actual memory of my own, just the one from when I was 12, and I have one from when I was 18 or 19 while I was on vacation from being in the military, just seeing him at a restaurant, and not even knowing who he was. So that's the only memories I have of him. So it's a bit
So it would,
odd when I was older.
so it would be safe to
What
say
were you
that
saying?
you and I both experienced the absent father as far as a phenomenological perspective.
Most definitely.
And with this particular platform, as far as subscribers, as far as our audience, our intention is not, of course, to bash anyone. We're going to approach matters from a non-judgmental perspective. Our idea, the objective here is to create a platform to provide recommendations, to provide suggestions in which to help the absent father get back into the life of his child or of his children. Have you ever given consideration into potentially having half siblings out there whom you've never met, possibly even having nieces and nephews? And as far as with us, we have, at the time of this recording, we have a 13-year-old daughter for our audience, knowledge purposes about us. We have a 13-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. Have you ever given consideration into maybe even having half siblings out there and nieces and nephews out there whom, at least as of now, you haven't met yet?
I know they're out there. I know my mom's told me before that he has double digit kids. She doesn't know exactly how many because I'm not the oldest of his children. And so I know there's half siblings out there. I've never really the only time I've ever really thought about it is like I've told you before, is like when I was in high school and of dating age and everything like that. I was always concerned about that. Like I was leery of dating because I didn't want to inadvertently start dating a half sibling, not knowing, because I don't know who his other children are. I've never had any interaction with them. And like I said, I only have really one memory of him from youth. So there's never been any discussion about who his other children are, where they live at, where they're located, how old they are. So if there's one that's even close to my age, I don't know. I assume there are. Um, but as far as like, I've never really thought about finding any of them. I know we've joked about it and stuff before, but as far as reaching out to anyone, it's never, or looking for anyone, it's never been anything, any thought of mine. How about you?
With this particular subject, I do have awareness that I am my biological father's oldest child. I have been told through relatives, predominantly his biological sisters, that he has had other children. They are significantly younger than me. I've not been in the position to meet any of them. Perhaps one day that can happen. I am very open into that relationship with possible half siblings and maybe even nieces or nephews that may or may not be out there, whether that be sometime in the near future or sometime down the road as far as the distant future. You had mentioned about having concerns about potentially dating a possible half sibling being a concern of yours many years ago. That wasn't something that I've never taken into consideration. But as far as when you mentioned that to me the very first time, it was just like, wow, that is something that could happen. And that's one of many reasons why I wanted us to create this particular podcast, to have this platform, to put those ideas out there. Like I shared with you, I've never thought about that throughout all my years prior to meeting you. And this was something that you were concerned about growing up. This amongst many things I would like for our audience, and I'm pretty certain that a lot of people could relate as far as the absent father. I want the absent father to think about that, to think about having children with multiple women, children who are siblings, children who may not have had a chance to meet each other. And outside of the possibility of them dating, just more so along the lines of they have siblings out there whom, because of actions or decisions or circumstances that present themselves, these siblings have not had a chance to meet each other and potentially may not even know about each other's existence. That's one of the things that I would like to use this particular platform for, is to bring awareness and to bring support to the absent father, to help the father ultimately become the best version of himself from the father's perspective that he can. Now, with your Bachelor of Arts in Human Development and Family Studies that you're in the process of completing, and congratulations. And of course, we're all waiting, as far as myself and our two children, we're definitely eagerly anticipating the graduation. But from your studies, why do you feel as though fathers leave? And of course, there's an array of reasons. But from your standpoint, your studies, why do fathers leave?
I think for every person it's different, but I think if you were to wrap it up into just a few different categories, I think some men are a little nervous about being a dad, which is understandable. I think some may have vices that they're worried will impact their child's life. And I think some look at it as like a package deal with their ex-girlfriend, ex-partner, and they don't want to deal with her, so they're one and the same and they leave it alone. And then I think there's also instances where there are women, and I'm not saying anything bad about anybody, but there are some women that make things a little harder because they have hurt feelings. So they make it harder for the guy to be around, which in his mind is comes to a point to where he just gets so frustrated and he's just done. It's just easier to just leave it alone. So I think every person has their different reason why, and there's nothing wrong with them. Like everyone has things that they need to work on and they need to figure out. But I think those are the main reasons why someone may leave.
You make it mentioning as far as women out there, and I'm pretty certain as far as sociologically they exist. But there being women out there who make things problematical for the father to be involved in the life or the lives of his child or children. I know they exist. Me personally or professionally, I've not met anyone, at least as far as my knowledge goes, who makes it intentionally problematical for the father of their children to be actively engaged and involved in the life or lives of the child or children. But for those of them who do exist, that's part of the reason why I wanted us to create this platform. If there's someone in our audience or someone who knows someone, as far as representing our audience, if they could bring awareness to the realization, or even if they're not aware of this, if they could bring awareness to the realization that they could be potentially behind part of the problem rather than the solution, I'll make the recommendation for us to communicate effectively and from a maturity standpoint as adults and as parents, because ultimately, no matter what took place or did not take place, as far as our relationship, whether from a romantic standpoint or whatever the dynamics were during the time in which this child was conceived and introduced to the world, let's put that to the back burner. Let's reach out to clinical practitioners or professionals if need be when the time is appropriate. I like to make the recommendation for us to let's make an assertive collective effort to focus on what's best for the child, particularly if that includes the mother and the father concurrently being involved in the life of the child. You also spoke about that proverbial package deal. I have met, I can say this, on the opposite end of the spectrum. I have met a lot of fathers and I've spoken with and I've worked with from a clinical perspective during individual, group, and family counseling sessions who shared with me that they would love to be a father. They would love to be the best version of a father of themselves that they could be, but they just do not want to deal with the mother of the child. So where I would come in at, like you mentioned about that package deal, I would work with them to figure out what can we do as mature, responsible adults, because you're sharing with me that this is something that you want to do. I will work with the client as far as let's remove that package because our relationship could be tainted in some manner with the mother, and that's fine as of now. And hopefully, this is something that we could work on in the near or if not the distant future. But what can we do to remove that package to say my relationship with the mother has no bearing on my relationship with my child or my children, just because that's referred to as correlation coefficient. This impact or this dynamic here should not have bearing on this dynamic here or these dynamics there. So this is something that I work with clients on. It is unfortunate that it does happen, and it's something that could take a bit of time. In some cases, it could be an extensive amount of time, particularly because of not knowing the actual details and circumstances that correlate with that particular dynamic. So I like to work with clients on that and ultimately work with, in this case, we're talking about the absent father, so we're talking about the males. Ultimately, helping them recognize, of course, if appropriate and if applicable, how advantageous it could be as far as our relationship as fathers with our children for them to see a healthy, communicative relationship with their mothers. And this is something that I've seen that has been proven to be very effective as time moves along, if applicable.
Yeah, I think the main thing with that one is it's also important for the woman to hold her part in it too. She also needs to make sure she doesn't make him feel like they have to be together in order for him to be around his child. And I know this topic right now is about the dads, but as much as it is about the dads, it's also about the moms because the mom also needs to acknowledge her part so that way he can be around. You know, there are instances to where, like I said, there are men that just don't want to deal with the headache and the drama that their child's mother creates for them. So they wash their hands of their child. And in a way, like they think of them and they miss them. I truly believe that, but it to them it's so much harder to be around them, and in their mind it could be causing issues for themselves because their child's mother is making it complicated. Now that's no excuse because you have just as much right to be around your child as their mother does. So there are avenues, like you said, different programs and different things, and reaching out to someone for assistance that can help with that. But I think us as adults in both parties should take ownership of what we've done. And like you mentioned, getting together with someone to help us understand that and facilitate that would be a big part in that.
I wanted to use this time to share our website with our audience. We have a company. The name of that company is Dr. Curry and Associates, and our website is www.drcurry.com. www.drcurryandassociates.com, and feel free to check out our website. And when you go to our services, we have an array of clinical services. If you go to our services page, you can see that we do offer parenting classes. And our job here is, what I'm focused on here is to help parents come together and become the best version of themselves, because our children can't accomplish anything if they have the proper support, they have that mentorship, they have that stewardship, and they have a warm, nurturing environment. In our services, we are based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but our services are available, and our website explains this. I didn't want to go too deep into that, but we do have means to work with people through telehealth, through teleconferencing means to work with people throughout the United States of America and also in other English speaking countries if needed, if our services are needed there. So we do have the ability to not only go national, but to go international there. So please feel free to check out our website. Again, that's www.drcurryandassociates.com. Click on our services page and go on and see our parenting related curriculum that we do have there, and also the family counseling services that we do have available. But going back to what we were discussing, with you being on the verge, on the cusp of completing that Bachelor of Arts in Human Development and Family Studies, and we just discussed why Father's Day, we made mention of that package deal. We made mentioning of possibly biological mothers making things a little bit challenging for the biological father, and then the biological father, just being a human being himself, he makes the decision to say, you know what, ultimately I did give in a spirit of effort, but perhaps it's just time for me to cut losses, so to speak, and walk away. This is where men move on. And I did want to create this platform for that particular reason. I wanted to have myself as Dr. Curry, as a male, being a board certified family recovery specialist. I wanted to have you, of course, as a woman, presenting your educational expertise, your professional expertise, of you being on the verge of completing that Bachelor of Arts in Human Development and Family Services. I wanted to create this platform to have two professionals, a married couple, and bringing perspectives. We're going to support and advocate for both genders, for the mother and for the father. What I wanted to transition into is we're talking about that package deal. We're talking about the mother in some cases making things a little challenging for the father. And like I mentioned a couple of times, this platform is not to be judgmental towards the mother or the father. It's just to bring things out from a sociological, cultural standpoint, and to create a platform where we can leave comments, we can contribute to the channel, we can contribute to this movement, and hopefully move towards putting the absent father in the past from a sociological, cross-cultural standpoint. Under those circumstances that you presented a few minutes ago, the father eventually moves on. The father,
Right.
he meets another person, he meets another woman, another child's created. Things happen there. The cycle's perpetuated. And before we know it, this father, we're going to say hypothetically, this father was 28 years old. He finds himself with 5 children with 5 different women. None of these children know of each other. I'm talking about a hypothetical situation. They live within close proximity as far as geographically. They all live within the same city. So they're, as far as geographically, that's not a barrier as far as why they don't know each other. But this father, he's perpetuated this cycle without having the help or the guidance or the mentorship or the stewardship as far as how we can stop this. And even though we do have 5 different children from 5 different women, we can still realistically be in their lives. We can still be supportive. And simultaneously, these children who are siblings can know each other and still can grow with each other and love each other and support each other. And even the mothers, even though they have no genetic relationship with the other women, they are essentially family too. The mothers, the 5 mothers who don't know each other, who may not have made the choice to be friends or have any affiliation with the other women, they are essentially families too, because their children are siblings with the children of these other women. From your perspective, why does this happen? Why do men move from woman to woman create children, don't take don't take care of those children, but find ourselves perpetuating that cycle in which there's now hypothetically 5 children out there fathered by one man, and this particular man is not in the life or in the lives of any of those children. What did your studies tell you about that?
I don't I personally, but like instances like that, like there are men and there are women, in my opinion, that love being pregnant as far as a woman goes. And as a man goes, I believe there are men that love the process and love getting someone pregnant. They love the thought of they have a child, that someone is carrying their seed, but they don't want any responsibility for that child. They don't want to do the 3 a.m. wake up calls. They just want to know in their mind that there's someone out there that they created. Now, every person is different and you can't lump everyone together in a group, but I believe there are truly believe there are men that are out there like that. Like the first time it happened, it may have been an accident or it could have been intentional. No one knows. But for someone to consistently do that and they make no effort to be in the child's life, they get the woman pregnant, and then once they know that they're pregnant, they take off and they're on to the next one. I think those are men that like to know that their genetic seed is progressing, like that they created a child, and that's all they need to know and that's all they want to know. Why people do that, I do not know. And I think there should be some studies done into that eventually one day, but I think right now it's so hard to find a group of people that will actually admit that. Like you're not going to find a group of 100 men that will openly admit, yeah, I just like getting people pregnant and I don't want anything to do from that moment on. But I do truly believe there are people that are like that. And I think some people may have started out the whole process, they're dating, they're in a relationship with the intention of being there. But once something got hard, once something got a little rockier than they wanted, they didn't want to try and work through it. So they left. And that's when that package deal come again. So they didn't want to be with the woman. So they don't want anything to do with the child. They don't want to complete. They want to just, in a way, erase that whole thing from their mind. So I think that's why that repetitive cycle of 8 kids, probably all close in age or not that far in age from each other, happens.
You spoke about potentially there being studies conducted about getting a group of 100 men. So in this case, we'll say that that can be a quantitative research study. Getting a group of 100 men who can admit that they purposely, they intentionally like to impregnate women, create seeds, and they have no intentions on being involved with these children, having a family, and things of that nature. Throughout my career, I've worked with an assortment, countless absent fathers, like you just mentioned. It could be a little bit problematical to get someone to admit that. From my memory, I've not had anyone. I've met many men who've had multiple children with multiple women across various states, and they're not involved. What they did share with me, they disclose that with me. They're not involved in any manner, or if they are, it's very minuscule. I've not had anyone admit to me, and I'm sure they do exist. I've not had anyone admit to me that they do have an infatuation as far as just impregnating women. That is something psychologically that does exist. I can support that. I can substantiate that. That does exist. But as far as extensive studies, I'm pretty certain that that particular content, as far as research, is pretty thin, and there are gaps out there in the literature that supports that. So this is definitely something from a topic perspective that could be benefited from some sort of quantitative or even qualitative research study, or even some sort of mixed methods approach using a combination of qualitative or quantitative approach there. But with all this taking place, whenever I'm working with a client and he shares with me that he has, and I'll say hypothetically, he's 29 years old and he has 7 children. We'll say in this case 6 women across 2 states. What I'll do here is I'll say, first of all, in a nutshell, are we in control? And of course, we are in control because what we do with our bodies from a genetic, biological perspective, we do have control over that. It's all about making those pro-social decisions. I'll say, are we in control? And we may not be in control as far as having some sort of sexually related mental health disorder diagnosis, or at least features of some sort of sexually related mental health disorder diagnosis. And there are quite a few sexually related mental health disorder diagnoses in the fifth edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders that go into that in some particular manner. But as far as that man, when I'm working with him, we're going to exclude any form of, for the sake of this episode of this podcast, we're going to exclude any form of psychiatric considerations as far as that. We're talking about someone who isn't controlled psychiatrically. This is just something that he engaged in on purpose, whether or not his decisions were geared towards purposely making a child move their way. So I work with the client and I'll help formulate treatment planning to put the client in a position to at least acknowledge you are in control of what you do as far as what happens with your body biologically. Now, as far as the X amount of children, and regardless of where they live and the women that's involved, what are we going to do moving forward as far as getting into the lives of these particular children, and as far as working with these women to make certain that not only are we in the lives of these children, but also that we're in a position to have these children being in the lives of their siblings, so they can, like I mentioned a few moments ago, they can grow together, they can be raised together, live together, and support each other as they progress through the various stages of life. And this is where I wanted to transition into what can fathers do who have been absent, regardless of how long? What can fathers do to get back into the lives of their child or of their children?
I think the biggest thing is to, when you decide and you want to and you start showing up again, I think the biggest thing is to stay consistent. Like, you have to, if that's the decision you're going to make, you need to be there. And if you tell them you're going to be somewhere, you need to be at that place. Because the whole thing of it is now is building trust with them. And when they ask you questions, you should answer them. Be wholeheartedly honest with them. Obviously, be honest within the content of their age. Don't give them graphic details, but you should just be honest. Don't hold anything back. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't try and hide the truth in little white lies or anything, because kids are very intelligent. They're going to know if you're keeping something from them. They're going to know if you're trying to weasel your way, as a nice way of saying it, out of something. And that is going to hinder the growth that you're making with them. So just always be honest and always be present. Always, like, if you, and stay consistent with your words. So if you tell them that you're going to be there to pick them up at 3 o'clock, be there at 3 o'clock. If you're stuck in traffic and you're running late, just give them a quick call and tell them, hey, I'm 5 minutes away. I'm stuck in traffic, but I should be there as soon as traffic starts moving and this light turns moving. And just give them another courtesy call when you're down the street. It's little things that help build that trust and help build that reliability, that are the important part, that is what you truly have to build. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to happen overnight. So you have to be consistent, and you have to be wholeheartedly into it. Because if you're not 100% into this idea, you're not 100% into getting reconnected and being around, then it's better not to do it, because now you're doing yo-yo effect. You're coming in, you're going out, and that causes more damage.
That level of trust, I like to prepare my clients that I've worked with, and of course, future clients that we're going to work with through our organization, and even people as far as our audience, people who leave comments and things of that nature on this podcast. I like to help clients prepare themselves for the possibility or even realization that the universe will unfortunately test you, will throw you a curve. You just made mentioning that if you're in traffic, if you're going to be late, give that courtesy call, give that notification. I worked with a client recently, and he shared a story with me that he did have, what you knew about, he did have active warrants throughout the state. And he spoke with me about operating an automobile without a license. The vehicle was not registered, didn't have any insurance with these active warrants, and he was driving through a city in which he did have significant encounters with local law enforcement throughout his adolescent years and throughout adulthood. What happened with him, he had shared with me that he was just pulled over, and we're not going to dive too deeply into the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America, but he had shared with me that he was pulled over and circumstances took place in which police officers searched his vehicle and contraband was found, unlawful items were found, and he was arrested and ultimately uh, was sentenced to 9 months in the county jail. And he had told me that this took place as he had just went to a local store, purchased some items for his son, and he was traveling to go see his son. He told me that he was literally just about a few miles away from where his son was residing at, and he told his son that he was coming, and he said he felt so horrible, not necessarily about the incarceration, which of course no one, at least from a clinical standpoint, wants to be incarcerated. No one wants to be in that type of environment. But he had shared with me that he felt so horrible that he told his son that he was on his way, and he just imagined the entire 9 months that he was incarcerated, that his son had assumed that he just stood him up. And he told me that when he got
Yeah.
word to his son did not believe what happened to him. And rather than getting upset, rather than shouting out, saying that, why don't you believe me? I have proof. He told me that he just took it for what it was because of his history of standing his son up. He said that he knew that at least this was the very first time after all those years, and by this time his son was transitioning into becoming a teenager. He had shared with me that after all those years, after, from his words, literally hundreds of times of standing his son up, or hundreds of times of purposely lying to his son because of decisions and behaviors that he was involved with that tainted him from a parenting perspective. He had shared with me that he did all those things on purpose. This was actually the first time where he stood his son up where it wasn't in his control. And because of those warrants, he unfortunately had to sit in the county jail for 9 months until everything was taken care of as far as with the criminal justice system. He had spoken to me during that individual counseling session. It was always very painful to see anyone cry. Very painful to see an adult male cry. And he was just talking about how he had the entire file and everything looked legitimate enough for someone of his son's age. With you mentioning age appropriateness, he said, I had the documentation as far as arrest reports, as far as court documentation, as far as proof that he was incarcerated from this date to that date that spanned the course of 9 months, that he was arrested initially at this time, and that time correlated with the time in which he was close to being expected to be at the place where his son was residing at. Under those circumstances, I encourage the absent father, if you're legitimately trying to get back into the life or lives of your child or children, I work with them and say, first of all, is this something that you want to do specifically for yourself? If this isn't something that you're not wholeheartedly in, like you just spoke about, being committed to, being invested in, perhaps we should. And what I like to do as a practitioner, I don't want to tell anyone what to do. I like to work with them from a collaborative perspective and offer recommendations that we can both agree with by the end of our time together, that this is what's going to take place. I'm just going to offer recommendations, you as the client, because I or we work for you. If you say this is sufficient enough for me to try moving forward, that's what we're going to go with as far as our game plan, and we're going to address it when we reconvene in the near future. So I'll work with the client to see, is this something that you realistically want to do? So we're going to say under these circumstances, for cases, the answer is yes. So this is what you want to do. So now we must be prepared for those very uncomfortable, very awkward questions. We must be prepared for what took place. You made mentioning of being age appropriate again, of course. So in this case, I like to tell the client, or at least recommend to the client, are you ready to share with your son or your daughter or your children the details of the course not being too gruesome? What was happening at that point in your life? Were you struggling psychiatrically? Was there some form of substance abuse that was taking place? Was there some form of polysubstance abuse taking place? Were we abusing various chemicals across multiple chemical groupings? that triggered psychiatric episodes? Were you battling mental health related challenges in which you made an effort to cope with through self medication with illicit and illicit chemicals? Were those things coming together and manifested themselves through criminogenic behavior and you were incarcerated? Did you find yourself perpetuating through the criminal justice system? Were you hypothetically sentenced to a 9 month period in the county jail? Was there some follow up as far as probation when you got out and you told yourself that you wanted to get yourself into some form of transitional housing, get yourself employed, get yourself situated, establish some independence? Did you tell yourself you were going to give yourself 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? Did you establish what's referred to as a SMART goal, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound? Did you set these SMART goals for yourself because you were working with some sort of practitioner or some sort of clinician during your incarceration or even a correctional counselor? Did you set those goals for yourself only to have some sort of violation or revocation, like we spoke about earlier, some sort of revocation in which you found yourself back incarcerated, and before you know it, you went from serving 9 months in the county jail. You were 45 days into your societal reintegration. You were on the verge of reaching out to your child or to your children, and now we're back incarcerated, and now we're potentially facing a 4 year sentence in state prison. So now, before you know it, we're approaching 5, 6, maybe even more years we've been away. While you're incarcerated, did you reach out to your child or the mother of your child or children, whether that be through a telephone call, whether that be through social networking? I was told that at least here in Pennsylvania, we do have correctional settings where they have means in place as far as social networking, where people incarcerated are allowed to reach out to their loved ones. Were you able to communicate with your child or the mother of your child or children? If the answer is yes, then of course we're at least in their lives, and that means, but unfortunate matters gotten us incarcerated. If the answer is no, I'll ask the client, what happened? Why not? What got in our way? And the point being is, your child or your children may ask those questions. We could have 4 different children. One child may be wholeheartedly receptive, may not want any response, may not want any explanation about what happened. They're just happy to see daddy is here with me, and daddy is back, daddy is safe. I don't have to worry anymore. The next child may be somewhat neutral. The next child may be wholeheartedly dismissive and say, you know what, trust must go both ways. You must earn my trust. The last child may decide, I've been disappointed. In this case, it could be the oldest because this person experienced the most the most grief. They've experienced all of those unfortunate circumstances throughout their lives, perhaps more frequently and more heavily in comparison to their siblings. That person may say, I am totally done. Well, I will work with the father to say, be prepared for the worst case scenario for all of this to happen, and make sure that this is something you're committed to, because we shouldn't have the expectation to walk back into their lives and your child or all of your children be wholeheartedly receptive. That would be great if it happens, and I'm pretty certain there are circumstances in which that does happen. But being realistic, we must be prepared for what I just mentioned to take place. There could be some sort of neutrality going on. There could be some sort of dismissiveness going on. There could be some form of condescending actions taking place. There could be some illustrations of passive aggressiveness. There also could be blatant, flat out disrespect taking place. Are you, as the absent father, are you ready to deal with this? And that's something that I feel as though putting clients in those positions or helping the absent father get at least psychologically or emotionally prepared to be in that type of situation. Could this be something that you're at least ready to take care of now? And like you mentioned, as far as the yo-yo and the inconsistency, if the answer is even maybe, I'll say perhaps let's do a little more work together, or even not in a professional setting. Reach out to someone who you respect. Reach out to someone who's been down that path before. Perhaps this person has a blueprint. That blueprint worked for them. Perhaps their particular blueprint could work for you, or at least you can take something from their blueprint and apply it to your life into your family, into your dynamic. What I wanted to transition into, as far as the absent father, I know the situation we gave was someone who was gone because of encounters with the criminal justice system. But going back to the person, things happen, they were just gone, even if that includes the criminal justice system. But now this person is back. Now this person is independent. Now this person is in a position in which he could be in the life or lives of his child or children. He is just deciding as of right now, this isn't something he's prepared to do. Through your studies, through your professional experiences as well, what do you feel as though stops the absent father from thinking about the psychological and the emotional damage that's being done to the absent child or the absent or the child or children that he's been absent from?
The truth of it is we as humans don't ever want to necessarily admit when we've done something wrong or we've caused harm or hurt someone else. So I think honestly, I think one of the things that keeps people from going back, that keeps them from reaching out to their kids and being around is the hurt and harm that they could have that they their absence has or could have caused. And no one wants to knowingly know that they hurt their kid in any way, shape, or form, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, any way. You don't ever want that in your mind that you caused that. So I think the whole aspect of being responsible for any form of discomfort or harm that they could have caused can keep someone from reaching out and going back and trying to mend it. Like it's just too hard to face what you've done. But I think ultimately there's never anything wrong with trying because you can always fix what was broken.
When it comes to the psychological and emotional, or combination of both, the anguish that children go through when there is an absent father in their lives, this is something that I've seen manifest itself throughout my life, going back to childhood, going back to elementary school. For the vast majority of classmates, let's just say I was in a class with 49 other people in my elementary class, and there's one or two children, their behavior is just a little more rambunctious than the rest of us, as far as just being kids who are having a good time, being excited to be in school. This child is, the behavior is very disruptive. So as a child, you're sitting back and wondering what's going on with my classmate. Why is my classmate so aggressive? Why is this person having these physical complications? Why is this person struggling academically? And even as a child, I knew that the person doesn't want to struggle. No one wants to receive poor grades in school. We all want A's on our examination. We all want the little stickers next to our name. We all want to be the one to get to that goal. There were teachers out. I was in their classroom. They would have a certain target number of stickers. If you used that sticker, you would earn some, whether that be a toy, whether that would be Domino's pizza, as far as lunch on one of the days where lunch perhaps may not be as tasty in comparison to other days. Well, those were things that was used as motivation to have good behavior. Going back to fourth grade, I have significant memories of my teacher in fourth grade. She would have two awards she would give out at the end of each month. One would be the student of the month. One would be the citizen of the month. The student of the month would be the student with the highest grade point average throughout her class. The citizen of the month would be the student with the best behavior. And of course, it's a little easier to quantify grades in comparison to behavior. That's more so of the eye of the beholder, so to speak. But my effort, I made an effort each month, and this was something that I was cognizant of each day. I did win Student of the Month throughout that school year, and I did win Citizen of the Month. I really wanted, I wasn't able to accomplish this. I really wanted to win Student of the Month and Citizen of the Month at the same month. I really wanted that. I came close one time. Unfortunately, I had a little mishap that month. I did win Student of the Month. I did have a little mishap. I said, that just cost me Citizen of the Month. But there were children, there were classmates I knew they did not have any chance of winning Citizen of the Month. And looking back as an adult with all my educational, professional personal experiences looking back, now I have an understanding of what was taking place, or at least I have a hypothesis as far as what was taking place as far as the behavioral and academic challenges that my classmates were demonstrating during those days. And this is something that I used 2 years ago. I started working with a client and actually just had an individual counseling session with her prior to us recording this episode. Very upon meeting her, I shared with her my approach as far as a practitioner. I said, I don't want us to waste time because as far as an individual session, we just have an hour together. Excuse me. We just have an hour together, and I really don't want to waste time or do you a disservice by losing time. Let's address this issue. She had shared with me, excuse me, that she was engaging in cannabis abuse, natural and synthetic, including cannabis cyclohexanol. I spoke with her why, and she shared with me that she was self-medicating because of a persistent depressive disorder diagnosis that she was battling. And she spoke with me about what's been triggering that is her being a single mother. And in this case, she was raising 8 children with 3 different fathers. She was raising 8 children without any assistance, any involvement from any of those 3 fathers. She spoke to me about each of her 8 children illustrating and presenting with behavioral problems to the point in which she would receive telephone calls from each of their schools throughout the day. She said this was something she would anticipate and would happen Monday through Friday during the school year. And some of her children were involved in summer school, and she said this took place in summer school as well. She said it also because of them being behind academically, they were involved with after school programming to help out with that. And she said these problems were still manifesting themselves from a behavioral perspective. So I told her, I said, without knowing your history, it sounds like there's one or two things happening. I want to address the serious one. I said, I introduced her to the ABCs of behaviors, with A being the triggering antecedent or the circumstance, B being the behaviors, with behaviors being meant to escape or attain something, and C being consequences, positive consequences being reinforcement, negative consequences being punishments. So I said, going to the D part of the ABCs of behavior, your kids are attempting to escape or attain something. They're attempting to communicate something to you. So I want to address two things. The serious one first, pedophilia, and I did mention at the onset of this episode, we will address childhood pedophilia. We will address pedophilia that children could be exposed to, which is why I wanted us to create this platform for parents to come together to see what can we do to help our children out ultimately, because ultimately it is about them once you're a parent. We spoke about teachers, we spoke about sports and extracurricular activities her children were in. She shared with me that this is something that unfortunately she had involvement with throughout her childhood, also with her siblings. So she shared with me that this was something that she knew that this was this wasn't something that she had to worry about. So in this particular case, she told me that. So I dove into the absent father. I said, is this something that you could attribute to not having any of the fathers of your children in their lives? And that's when she told me, and we just met, keep in mind, we were only talking for about 5 minutes. She told me that unfortunately, none of the fathers of her children are are in their lives. I said, could your child with these behavioral problems, could this child be pretty much attempting to communicate that he wants his father in his life? And she shared with me, she said, it's ironic that you said that because my child had told me that this was something that he's been battling with. And he felt as though that if his behavior had changed abruptly, she told me that this was something that was not happening. This was something that just started out of the blue. So at least according to her, and she seemed like she was a very excellent mother, and she is a very excellent mother. And she told me that she was totally taken aback about why the behaviors changed. She said her son went from being an honor roll student to all of a sudden receiving nothing but F, not turning in assignments, attacking students, attacking teachers. She said he's a sweetheart. Now all of a sudden he was violent. So something took place. And she said that he was watching a movie and there was a scene in which the father was there. She said perhaps that triggered something inside of him where he all of a sudden started asking questions about his absent father. And his plan was, in his adolescent mind was, let's get our behavior amped up. Let's put mom in a position where she's obligated to reach out to the biological father and get him involved. She told me this did happen, and the biological father of her son, he pretty much told her that he didn't want to have any involvement with what was taking place. His behaviors were essentially her fault as a mother. So I asked this woman, I said, were you able to defend yourself? Were you able to say that in a nutshell, of course, without being judgmental, without being defensive, without attacking? I asked her, were you able to say that it takes a mother and a father? I'm doing the best that I can to not only raise this child, but 7 other children, unfortunately, by myself. She shared with me that those those words went ignored eventually, and ultimately that nothing changed. And this has been something I've been working with her for a little over 2 years now, and she shared with me that this was something that has not changed, and it's very unfortunate. From your standpoint, a mother with the circumstance I just mentioned, this child is going from being a sweetheart, well behaved, the best he can as far as good behavior at home under the circumstances, just being a young child. So young children are going to be a little rambunctious. So he went from receiving all A's and having good behavior in school, getting those stickers, getting those awards, getting those praises, to all of a sudden transitioning into a student who's receiving all F's and getting behavioral problems and having her being called each day. So what happened? So it's clearly not something intellectual because he was on the honor roll. He was receiving nothing but A's. So we don't go from, and we're excluding any form of neurological accident or something that caused some sort of traumatic brain injury. So we're excluding that. So the father is told that here's what your son's doing. Here's what's taking place. He ignored it. He did not intervene. He did not say, let me get myself together as a father. From your standpoint with all of that, why did the father ignore all of this taking place? With the poor grades that's happening, the behavioral challenges, the mother saying that I really would like to help, and your child and children need you. Why did he still, and continue to this day, still ignores those responsibilities, ignores those pleas for help?
He just doesn't want to be a father. Like there are people that don't want, even though they've created kids, they just don't want their kids. They don't want to take ownership. They don't want to take responsibility. They don't want to help that child navigate through life and through the hardships that are coming and that are occurring. And it's sad to say, and it's really hard for her, but it's a conversation that ultimately she's going to have with her child and most likely the others as well, that you know it's their loss. It's that in that instance it's not his as the child's loss, it's his biological father's loss. And he can only he can do he can live his life to the best way possible for him. And one day when he's older, maybe he can find him and have that conversation with him. But ultimately, like right now in the situation, it's just that man just does not want anything to do with his child. And there's not really, every person has their reasons for not doing something and not being somewhere or caring. And it just depends on who he is, his personality, and him as a person as to why he doesn't care about his child. But that's what that is. He just does not care and he doesn't want anything to do with it. He might be one of those guys that falls into that category, like I said, that just likes the process and likes the thought idea of him having children out there, of making children, but not being around to help support them and take care of them. And he could also fall into the category of where he looks at the mom and the son as a package deal and doesn't want anything to do with the one, so he doesn't want anything to do with the other. And he could also fall into a category where he just doesn't want anything to do with anybody. Maybe he's started, unfortunately, there are dads out there that have kids with women and then they meet someone else they feel better with, then they start a family and they're actually present for that family. Maybe he into that category. There's without knowing them and without knowing the guy or talking to him to figure it out. There's a few reasons why he could do that, but ultimately it all boils down to that he just does not care about that child, which is sad, but it's true.
That's something that's very unfortunate. But when it comes to the absent father, and I'm working with someone from a clinical practitioner perspective, oftentimes there's a lot of issues that we should address from a treatment planning standpoint. A lot of our time together, whether that be an individual counseling session, a group counseling session, or a family counseling session, a lot of things center at the absent father being at the foundation of emotional dysregulation, substance abuse, health-related challenges, financial issues. A lot of that, at least from a hypothesizing standpoint, could be alleviated with a little support from the biological father. And that's what I wanted this platform to be about. I really want us to all come together. And I'm pretty certain that within our audience, there's going to be people that say, I know that guy, or I am that guy. And there's nothing wrong with us making mistakes. We are human. Unfortunately, we are flawed. But let's recognize that mistake and let's say, okay, what can I do today? Because the past is history, the future is a mystery, and the present is a gift. And with this gift, we are in control. We're not in control over what happened. It already took place. We are in control over how the future could manifest itself, how it could unfold. But that entails us, because it's not written yet, that entails us taking the appropriate actions in the present as a father. Now, one thing I wanted to touch on was some form of justification that I've heard throughout my career, whether it be professionally or personally. I've heard the biological father, the absent father, talk about financial considerations. Now, throughout conversations you and I've had about this particular subject, you shared with me some very, very valuable, very instrumental, cost-effective ways for the biological father to be present in the life or lives of his child or children. From a cost-effective perspective, because I want to remove all barriers with our platform. So we're going to address the financial barrier from a cost-effective standpoint. What could the biological father do to get back into the life or into the life or lives of his child or children?
It's easy as long as you decide. Like there are things that you can do that don't require you to spend money to be with your kids. You can take them to the park. You can, or you just go and sit and hang out with them at their house. They go and sit and talk to them while they're in their room, or hang out with them while they're at their friends, or go to their sporting events, their school games and stuff like that. Or if your kid likes to play a certain sport, you could go to the dollar store at Five Below and get that ball or that bat and ball that they like to play, that activity that they like, and go over to their house and work out with them. Kick the ball around, go shoot hoops, go play a little bit of catch. There's things that can be done that don't require you to spend a lot of money. And ultimately, that's what kids want. Kids want your time and your attention. They don't really need you to spend hundreds of dollars on them to spend and be around them. Eventually, as they get older, there's going to be times where they may not want to spend all their time with you, but they still want you there. So yeah, they want you to be at the park, even though they're running around with a friend, but they still want your presence there because that means something, that matters. But it's the little things. It's the being present. It's the being present, the showing up, the just kicking a ball around, like spending time, sitting on the couch, talking, watching cartoons or a movie together. It's things like that. That's the part that matters. That's the time that they want.
With you mentioning spending that time, I know we were talking about being cost effective, but I wanted to share something that happened with us personalized. I moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania from Dallas, Texas a little before you and our daughter Tierra at the time. It was just you, myself, and her. I moved here, got our home situated, got everything situated, and you all followed through. Once things were finalized. It was her birthday, her last birthday in Dallas, Texas. Just, and I wanted to share this with the absent father, how, like you were talking about the child maybe at the park playing with his or her friends, but just you being there is very powerful. What I did, I flew to Dallas, Texas, just to be there for her birthday party. And you did a great job with coordinating that. I had nothing to do with that. You did a great job, and like she had a lot of fun. It's like all of her classmates and all of her friends they had a ball there. So obviously, with me being there, and of course we were talking daily, telephonically, and using various forms of teleconferencing to communicate and see each other. But obviously, I knew that I was not going to be the focal point as far as her playing with me, even though her dad just flew from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Dallas, Texas to spend the weekend with her before her move with me to our new home in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So that party, at least according to my memory, is about 3 hours long. So what I did, I knew that she wasn't going to, she'd rather play with her friends than play with her boring dad. So I called a buddy of mine, an old army buddy, and we spent that time together. We communicated, but we haven't seen each other in a couple of years because he had left where we were stationed at the time. But we kept in touch. So I figured I just gave him a call. He drove he drove 3 hours. Not, I wasn't surprised by that whatsoever. He drove 3 hours, and we just sat downstairs in the place we were at. We enjoyed the soda and the pizza and the other the items that you had provided as far as the party. And I was just sitting there like, wow, even though my daughter's upstairs, she's playing it. I wasn't an absent father. I'm not trying to put myself in that particular situation. Say I understand. What I'm doing here with this self-disclosure, I'm just presenting that. I'm just caveating on what you said. Just being there. Just my daughter knowing if she was even aware, even caring at the time because she was having a ball at the birthday party. Just her knowing that her old man was downstairs and just we're going to do our thing once the party's over, once we say goodbye and we gather all of the toys. Just her knowing that I was there, I'm pretty certain just made that day just a little more special. So like when you offering, if you know hypothetically, the absent father knows that his child will say has a football game scheduled. It's at Saturday. It's at XYZ Park. I know where that park's at. I'm available. Even if we can't afford the admission, and I know certain places may allow you to get in for free, while other places may have some sort of some fee there. Let's just say we have a football game. It's at a local park. Let's just say that we don't have the funds to get inside of the game. We can at least still be there. We can watch from afar. We can still stand outside of the gate. We can still stand somewhere where we can see what's taking place. And letting the child know that, hey, I am here. I saw what you did. I saw the play you made. I would like to actually work on you with this for my knowledge of football. The child could appreciate that. So we got that quality time. We got that mentorship. We got that stewardship that was illustrated there. The child felt supported. You were engaged. You were attentive, and that was all very cost effective. So those are some of many things I would like to use this platform for. What I want to do now is I'd like to wrap up this episode. I hope that with what we put out there, that we are creating a platform for audiences to use. But like I shared earlier with our company, Dr. Curry and Associates, feel free to visit our website at www.drcurryandassociates.com. Click on our services tab. You can see that we have an array of services, cost-effective services. We don't want that to be a barrier to what we have taking place as far as this movement and other movements that we have going on. Feel free to reach out to us. But like I mentioned, we're in a position to not only work with people in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, Southwestern Pennsylvania area, we're in a position to work with people nationally. And of course, if you're in an English speaking country, we're in a position to possibly work with you internationally as well. Hopefully the information that you were exposed to during this episode of our podcast you found informative. If so, please subscribe to our channel. That channel is Dr. Joshua John Curry, ED.D. Like like the video. Check out some of our other videos that we have there. We do have intentions on at least posting an episode once a week. And again, our channel and our podcast will focus predominantly on parenting related matters. Some of the other presentations that we have posted there are geared towards substance abuse and cross addiction and co-occurring related considerations. I do have intentions on posting some presentations that will also focus on parenting related matters. Again, thank you for your time, and feel free to subscribe to the channel and check out our website, check out our company. That's www.drcurryandassociates.com, and that company is Dr. Curry and Associates, and we're based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Thank you for sitting through our episode, and we'll catch you again.